everyone, and welcome to Cyber Knowledge Partners Cyber Short. I'm Linda Zecker.
And I'm Catherine Mihalich, and today we're going to talk about questions.
And so we thought we would start off with both funny questions and then serious questions, because we really believe there are 5 important questions that boards should be asking. But before we do that, we thought maybe a fun way to do this would just be to talk about some of the funny questions that we've heard in boardrooms, and quite frankly, probably some that we've asked in boardrooms. But starting out, one of my favorites is let's see, this AI thing. Is that the same as the cloud?
It's the giant technology blob of not really sure where one thing starts and the other one thing finishes. So yeah, that's always an interesting one.
And another favorite of mine, because I have a grandson and he's a little bit of a techie, is to ask the question or make the statement. Now, my grandson knows a lot about technology, and he told me that we should be using blah, blah, blah. Are we using blah, blah, blah? And what does that mean?
Grandchildren, the most aggressive technology expert around.
Yeah, and no one knows how to answer that question because everyone's sitting there going, okay, yeah, okay. You don't want to
Yeah.
really insult the person, but still you're like, yeah, he's very knowledgeable, very knowledgeable.
Yeah, one of my favorites is the can we just hire some of those guys in the hoodies to test us out? That's
Yeah,
always a good one.
yeah, the guys that are have pizza boxes under their thing and they look like the Unabomber or something. Can't they fix this? I mean, can't well, why can't we do that?
And the other classic one is, well, everybody talked also about, all the horrible stuff about Y2K, and then it was a big yawn fest.
Yeah, and you always get on board, you always have a bunch of ex-CEOs and things like that, and they always then want to tell you their story with Y2K or their story with this, or we spent all this money, and it just goes on, but it's really not, it's not a funny question, but when you look back on it, it's kind of a funny question.
Yeah. And, I think one of the other things that we talk a lot about is that there's not sometimes a deep dive into a situation or into a question or
Right.
into a particular report or what's happening in the industry. And, Linda, you and I, especially you, sat through a lot of mid-year reviews when
Oh
we were at
God.
Microsoft.
Oh God.
And,
Nightmares. I'm having a nightmare, a flashback.
and the old red, yellow, green stoplight, check marks, whatever they were. But you can't do cybersecurity with just metrics. That's an important part, but you can't do it with oh, we're green there. We can move on. We're green. So,
Well, and I think the problem with that is that, you know, it's always that quick answer. Can't we just have a dashboard? Can you give us a dashboard? And if we have the dashboard, we could just look at that at every board meeting, and that will tell us what if we're okay or not. And so many boards still to this day do not have a cybersecurity committee. So they handle this in the audit committee, and that becomes a 5-minute conversation once a quarter. And it's just not adequate to really get to the bottom line of all the things that these companies should be addressing. And so you get the dashboard, as you said, it's red, yellow, green, and you look at it, you say, okay, well, what's yellow mean? Does that mean we're good, we're improving? And no one's really asking what the risk factor around that is and how much, what does that mean to us? And what's the importance of that? And so it doesn't even spark a conversation. What it does is just gives everyone okay, we can move on, not a problem.
right. Or it's we're compliant.
Yeah,
Compliant is not
yeah,
safety.
yeah.
It's not cybersecurity. It's just a part of it. So, you and I talked a lot about this. And what are 5 questions that we can suggest that kind of start to tease that deeper discussion and help to move away from we're compliant or we're red or we're yellow or we're green.
And I think that if we go through the questions, our first question was around materiality. What does materiality mean? And how do you determine if something is a material breach, yes or no? And who determines that? And what's the process around that?
Right. And it's just not one part of the organization. It's IT, it's finance, it's legal, because as you always remind me, it's an SEC question, right?
That's
It's
right.
S- right. So it's way more involved rather than just IT doesn't think it's material.
Yeah, and when you have an SEC requirement like that, you have 4 days to respond. And so it doesn't mean you can wait until the fourth day to determine whether it's material or not, because by the fourth day, you have to put out to the SEC, to a public report if you're a public company, what that breach means, what it means to you long term, what it means to you short term, potential impact to your revenue. And if was there any critical information that was divulged either about your customers or your employees? I mean, this is more than just we had a material breach. There's a lot to it. And so you have to have a very strong procedure and you have to know what you would do in advance. You can't wait until the day it happens.
And I bet you I know one of the most important parts of that digging into the materiality is dwell time.
People don't really understand what dwell time is. And dwell time is the amount of time that a bad actor, a bad code, whatever the case may be that's causing this breach was actually in your system. And so when you're having that board meeting and you need to be asking about dwell time, and if you get a long, complicated answer by the IT person or the CISO, that's not the right answer. The right answer should be days or hours or minutes. It should not be, well, we're looking into blah, 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 blah. No, you need to know that. And that is a critical part of this material breach. And you have to know that right away as
Right.
soon as you find out.
And I just looked over at my notes to make sure because it's a little shocking almost to me that the industry average for dwell time is somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks.
Yeah, yeah,
That is crazy.
yeah.
That's a long time.
Well, think about it this way. I mean, if people are trying to like equate dwell time, it'd be like in your home, if you have a break-in in your home, if you discover it in 1 hour, it might not do that much damage. If you discover that someone has been in your home for days or weeks, oh my God, imagine what the damage they could have done. Imagine the things that they could have taken. Imagine the information that they've gained about you. And so think about it that way. It's someone invading your space in a way that's meant to do you harm.
Right? And I always think of those TV shows or the movies where there's the stranger who's been living in the attic for a month or a year, right?
I hate
And
those
they
shows. They're scary.
I don't like that. So dwell time, it's important. And it is a really good proxy for how mature you are, how your overall process and system is. Tools are great, but if you can't look at dwell time and know what a dwell time is for any of the breaches that you've had, that's something that needs to be looked into.
And then the third really important question is around supply chain.
Right.
And you and I have talked about supply chain ad nauseum because we really think but it's such an important topic
It
that
is.
people are just not aware of.
Right. And this is not second party. This is not third. This is fourth party risk. So if I have hired someone and they are using a supplier who gets breached, do we have a process in place for that on how that's going to get reported up to us through the vendor that we work directly with? What's our process to go back through that chain and, shore up whatever needs to be shored? So you got to think about the full ecosystem.
Yeah, when you think about supply chain, I think another way of equating that too, back to the home analogy, is that, you might have your front door locked and you might have everything in the front of your house secure. But if the back door is not secure and someone comes in the back door, they can do just as much damage. And if I was going to be a hacker, that's exactly the way I would come in through the back door. Because these smaller companies do not have within your supply chain do not have the sophistication many times to be able to have, a lot of IT support and understand that they have been breached or there's somebody already in their system. That's therefore going to go into your system.
Yeah.
And boards don't need to know who all your vendors are, and they don't have to be in a position to, evaluate each of those vendors, but they need to make sure that there is a person in the company that is doing that work. And so they have one person they can point to and say, okay, this person is on top of every one of these vendors to ensure that they cannot get into our systems through their systems.
And we have a process for if that does happen, right?
Correct. And then you're one of your personal favorites,
It is.
AI fakes. Yeah,
Deep fakes.
yeah, deep fakes.
Well, we did spend time writing, Trust Protocol, three books about all of this. That, the deep fake we talked about deep fakes in all three of those books.
Yeah, and look at what happened. I don't know the details. I think you have more information on that. That's that story in Hong Kong where some finance person or something got deep faked. He was on a Zoom call and half the people on the call weren't real, but no one knew that. And he actually transferred $25 million. That's
25
crazy.
million.
Yeah.
Well, you think about some of the Zoom calls,
Yeah.
especially during times of COVID. It's a little less now. I think people are a little more cautious, but still, you look at the Zoom calls, you have all these people showing up, and sometimes people don't come on camera. Personal preference. I try to. Um, but some people, it's just a phone number.
Right.
Who's checking that phone number, right? Do you know that that person who says they're from finance actually worked there and are someone? So, and my other favorite thing is sometimes old school, safe words matter.
Well, I think as far as the Zoom calls and things like that, I think a good rule of thumb is to require that everyone be on the call with video on. Unless you're having a bad hair day, then you should get an exception. But other than that, I think everyone should have to be on them because you need to know who is on the call. And I've been on multiple board calls when there's been a number that's popped up. And rather than just beginning, we've said, who is this number? Who's on this? And if someone doesn't respond, and most of the time, it's a board member that's calling from, their a different cell phone or whatever. But if it's not, they hang up on that person. They disconnect that person. And that's the kind of procedure or protocol that has to be in place all the time to make sure you know who's on these calls.
Yep. And you know what? And if they were supposed to be on that call, they're going to call back.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yep.
So then the last one, and I think this one is, again, it's challenging for boards, it's AI agents. And I would venture to say that the majority of board members don't even know what an AI agent is.
Right. And they are a necessary sometimes not necessary. Sometimes people make agents when they don't really need them, but it's a technology that people should be looking into and should be taking advantage of. So we're not saying don't have AI agents, but again, you need to have the rules around who can develop them, who's keeping track of them. How is somebody double checking to make sure? You've heard me talk about this. There were two situations just in the last, I think, week or 10 days where some AI agent got in and deleted not only all the company data, but all the backup data. And then on top of that, someone actually saw that story, wrote into their agent that their AI agent couldn't do that, but still somehow still did it. So here's a company that not only lost all of their data, but all their backup. So now they're starting from absolute scratch. Think about all the customer data, all the orders, all the revenue, everything. So again, you need to keep track, you need to have a process, and you need to have somebody responsible for saying that's not a need that we need for that AI agent. Great idea, but not at this time, or not really, sometimes the pretty shiny thing gets a little overdone.
Right. And I think the most amazing thing about AI agents is that companies give them credentials before they've even gone through the legality of who they are or what the agent's all about and what their capabilities are. And
Yeah.
sometimes they have capabilities beyond the person that's created them. And so that's the scary thing that, again, you've got to have a procedure around that. You can't just allow people to create agents and run with them. There has to be some guardrails.
Right.
And, it's all moving so fast. And, board meetings normally happen once a quarter. And sometimes, again, the things around cyber happen in the audit committee if they don't have a cybersecurity committee, which is a personal irritation of mine. I think they have to have them. But AI agents are something that it's never going to be brought up unless you have a cyber committee that's really looking into this. And board members are never going to get the information or the knowledge they need to even ask questions that can, prompt a discussion.
Right. So I think it'd be good to review our 5 questions.
Sure. So materiality, we've
Yeah.
talked about that. Dwell time, very important. Supply chain, again, Catherine and I have talked about that a lot. Another really important thing. Deep fakes, everyone should be on the alert for deep fakes. And then AI agents. And those are 5 questions that if you bring those into your board meeting, you will prompt discussions. And hopefully you will prompt some education around those things so everyone's feeling comfortable that they have a better understanding so that they can be part of the discussion and know what better questions to really ask.
Yeah, and these will not be red, yellow, green discussions. These are messy, they're complex, but they're really, really necessary discussions. And the complexity and the messiness of them is a feature, not a bug. And you have to keep that in mind because it's an uncomfortable conversation, I'm sure, for leadership to have with the board about these things. But I think it's important to encourage and say, look, this is going to be a messy discussion, and we're okay with that because we have to have that messy discussion.
Yeah, and I think the best conversations in boards are when you have a meaty discussion.
Mhm.
And I always feel best about a board meeting when I leave feeling like, number one, I contributed something, but more importantly, I learned something. And that's what comes out of those discussions. And, I just think that the more knowledgeable you can be as a member going into a board meeting, the more value you add.
Yeah. And I know our next short, we're going to talk about what does that discussion, what can it sound like?
Right.
I remember when I first came to DC back in, let's just say it was before 2000. Um,
Coward.
December of 1988. How's that? I took on a management position and I was just green around the gills and there was a person on my team who wasn't performing. And so I spoke to HR and they gave me you're going to have the discussion with them. And I just remember sitting there going,
Yeah.
what does that sound like? Right? They tell you the things you have to cover and the things you kind of have to say. But if you've never been a part of one of those discussions, you don't have a sense of the tempo and what it may sound like. So I think in our next short, when we have and we give you a little sense of what it may sound like, I think it'll give people a little more courage, maybe, or comfort to engage in those discussions because they're messy.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, we have put together a one pager and we're going to have that posted on our website at cyberknowledgepartners.com. And, it's available there. And then we'd always love to have a deeper conversation. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can reach out to us on cyberknowledgepartners.com and or through, LinkedIn or other ways. But I think the important thing is just to help you become more knowledgeable in any way that we can become an advisor to you on that. We would love to do that.
Right? And until then, ask much better questions and don't be afraid of the messy.
So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We really appreciate your time and we hope this was helpful. We look forward to our next short. So thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.